Mass News has been following closely a federal court hearing held today after local running shop 413 abruptly shut down last month.
The charities they worked with, hoping to get back their lost donations they claim were never paid to them. And Western Mass News reporter Reagan Lockery was in court and joins us live with what happened today. Reagan?
Yeah, that's right, Abby and Chris. The attorneys representing those charities tell me this is a very unusual case, although as we last reported, 413 posted on Facebook that they were bankrupt. It turns out they never formally filed for bankruptcy. So today, these local charities petitioned the court to force 413 into bankruptcy and liquidate their assets. Laura Hannerty is the president-elect for the Junior League of Greater Springfield, an organization that provides college scholarships to young women who are active in the community. But on Thursday, Hannerty found herself in federal court, fighting for what she claims several local charities across Western Mass are owed by East Longmeadow Race Shop 413.
There really is not one cause I can think of that hasn't been impacted in this.
And for Hannerty, this alleged betrayal is personal.
And their previous store as well. So for about 9-10 years, I've been running with that running community.
It was revealed in court that local running and race coordinating shop 413 withheld tens of thousands of dollars worth of donations from charities they worked with. For a flat fee, 413 provided services during charity events, including race registration, which attorney Katie McDonough informed the court was done through a website where they collected fees and donations. But instead of using a bank account operated by the charity, it went right into 413's pocket. And McDonough alleged several of her clients were denied access to that account, while all of them were denied access to the money inside.
People need to know that when they are making a charitable donation, that money goes to its intended recipient.
Thursday, both McDonough and co-counsel John Goldsmith filed a motion to appoint a trustee to look into 413's assets, which was granted by the judge.
There are rights that a bankruptcy trustee has to do to look into transfers that took place within a certain period of time before the bankruptcy, and there may be an ability to recapture those funds, bring them back into what they call a bankruptcy estate, and distribute them evenly amongst all the creditors. So it's sort of a clawback provision.
And McDonough tells Western Mass News, in her experience, involuntary bankruptcy cases like this one are very unusual.
I think they're very rare. Typically, debtors will file for bankruptcy. When they state they're bankrupt, that generally means that they have filed a petition with the court asking that the court stay collections and that a proceeding entail to either liquidate their assets or otherwise pay off creditors. In this case, the debtor had not, in fact, filed a bankruptcy petition as far as we could tell.
The 5 charities on your screen have signed the petition so far, but it's believed many more were impacted. A court date has not yet been selected. However, 413 has 21 days from May 30th to respond before the court takes action. Western Mass News did reach out to 413 ourselves, but have not yet heard back. Reporting live in studio, Reagan Lockery for Western Mass News.